Hello, BookTube. Recently, Micah Cummins and I decided to do a buddy read here on YouTube. I don't usually get invited to do a lot of buddy reads. I am a social pariah, an outcast, a leper. But I think Micah was intrigued by the inaugural episode of the Steve Tiberius Donahue Book Club, where we picked A Distant Mirror by Barbara Tuchman, which is a 700-page work of medieval history. And both Micah and I went right away to a natural book to read along with that, and that is the historian Dan Jones's fiction debut, Essex Dogs, which is a historical novel about a hardy band of English warriors who actually launched their way to storm the beaches of Normandy at the beginning of that war, the war that's at the heart of A Distant Mirror. And the choice worked. We made it somewhat impulsively. We're both 20-something young guys just trying to figure out this topsy-turvy world. So we impulsively picked a book that was not out in America yet. We had both heard about it on UK book channels. It didn't come out in America until the middle of the month that we were doing a read-along for. We'll be more careful about that in the future. But that read-along was a lot of fun. I think a lot of you, judging by the emails that I've been getting, came to the same ultimate conclusion that I did, which is that the book is extremely anachronistic in its characterizations and its attitude and the general air of the thing, but that it's unbelievably readable, just unbelievably addictively readable. You don't want to stop reading it. It's a very fast read, even for all of you poor creatures who are so overcommitted. You still find yourself just gulping this thing down. And as I mentioned in my last discussion about the book, that's a talent. That's not anything to be taken for granted. There are plenty of authors who can't do that, couldn't even if they tried. And we're not done talking about Essex Dogs, Micah and I. We're going to do some sort of conversation in a video together next week. But in the meantime, it naturally occurred to us that we might want to keep doing buddy reads. And I made a suggestion for next month, for March's buddy read, and Micah jumped at it. And once again, there is an element of contouring this choice to something else that's going on BookTube. With the Essex Dogs, there was a minor amount of contouring going on with A Distant Mirror. And with this new choice, it's the same way, because one of the signature events going on BookTube in March is March of the Mammoths. And that is very, very long books that hit 800 pages, and sometimes that hit 800 pages without even being winded, and they have a lot more story to tell than that. And Micah and I have picked a book. This may be along the same lines as a lot of the mammoths that a lot of you have been talking to me about over the years since March of the Mammoths started. Oftentimes, March of the Mammoths is a slight nudge, a gentle, friendly nudge, for you to pick a book that's on your shelf, and that's been on your shelf for a while because you just haven't felt. You look at it and think, theoretically, I'm as interested as I am when I bought it, but now is not the time for me to be taking on an 800-page thing. March of the Mammoths is a little reminder that you're never going to get it read if you think that way, and that you might be rewarded if you took it down off the shelf and read it, especially in good company. So the read-along that Micah and I are doing for March is a mammoth. And a lot of you will know it. It's Shogun by James Clavell. And this is a huge book, 1,100 pages long, gigantic commitment on Micah's part because he works and has a family and friends and personal hygiene. But nevertheless, as Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, he made another announcement. It's his event, March of the Mammoths. He made another announcement video for 2023's version, and his announcement video was fantastic, as they all are. In no small part to me, because Jason always points out that he gets everything that we're doing here, that the best parts of BookTube are doing. He gets it completely. There's no contest here at all. There's no snobbery here at all. So he's the first one to admit he's a very slow, meticulous, careful, sensitive reader. He's the first one to admit that March of the Mammoths is not about finishing mammoths, because he doesn't often finish the mammoth that he picks himself, the host of the event. He doesn't often finish what he picks. No, March of the Mammoths is about giving it the old college try. It's about taking these things down and giving them some attention. I think that with a little bit of effort, a little bit of motivation, you could read Shogun in the month of March. And you will have that motivation because Micah and I are going to do it. Now, this is another example. This pattern tends to be true in read-alongs of mine, and I don't mind it. If I were as insufferable as I play act, if I were a condescending snob, then it would be unbearable. No one would do it. But the element that I rather like is the fact that I am extremely familiar with the book we're buddy reading, and my buddy reading partner this time around has not read it, even once. I like that dynamic, provided no one's lording it over anybody else. That can be, you're getting both ends of the spectrum or perspective there, and I think that can be really interesting. I haven't read this book in quite some time. I just recently found this trade paperback, this pretty thing, and I have another trade paperback. The previous one that they did is also pretty. It doesn't look anything like this, but you can see it's a huge thing. This paperback is 1,100 pages long, and I just recently found this, and I have that other trade paperback, the newer one that the publisher came out with, and I also have somewhere here the old white mass market paperback that a lot of you will remember that just had a sword pommel on the cover. I'm not sure that mass market paperback would survive a reread. I'm not 100% sure that this trade paperback will survive a reread either. The problem with mammoths when you're reading them in a printed volume is that until you're good and sunk in the middle, 200-300 pages in, the book is extremely vulnerable to its own weight. The first 100 pages are eager at every turn to tear themselves away from the binding of the book, and so are the last 100 pages. Needless to say, that I will not need to worry about with an ebook. The ebook is perfectly fine. I have it here, and isn't this thing lovely? This is an Android Lenovo tablet with the power cell in a grip on the bottom rather than being a flat battery in the device. So you've got a very convenient grip, and it has a stand. I saw this originally on Mark's channel, Book Time with Elvis, and I have since been calling it the MarkBot. And this is probably the form that I'm going to be reading this in. Alas, it won't be my Kindles, since they are still acting up. They're still being a real problem. But I have lots of redundancy when it comes to e-reading, and that need not be the case. I don't have anything against reading printed books, but the printed book of a mammoth, that can be tricky, especially when you're as rough on your things as I am. I don't think I'm going to have much of a problem manhandling this volume. so I think I'll do it that way. And I wanted to make this video to warmly invite you all to try. Now, a lot of you are going to be participating in March of the Mammoth anyway. Maybe you've already mentally picked a book thereabouts. Maybe you want to mentally change that and join me and Micah, where maybe the prospect of company makes Shogun more appealing than whatever you originally picked. We still have time. Still plenty of time to think about it. I don't know how many of you, so many of you are busy. You're committed, responsible members of your community. Of course, there's also the fact that you're all absolutely formless blobs of protoplasm for 10 hours out of every 24. So I don't know that you have the bandwidth for 2 mammoths in the March of the Mammoths. But if you want to rearrange the deck chairs and make Shogun your mammoth, you're welcome to join me and Micah. He'll be making an announcement video. I'll leave a link to his channel anyway. I'm sure that all of you know his channel. And we will be splitting this book into segments. It's the only way to do it. The book isn't as helpful in terms of that as some books are. So I think the wisest way would probably just be to go by length. And if we round up for generosity's sake, let's say the book is 1,200 pages long, then that means 300 pages a week. That's a lot. That's a lot. Quite a few of you make videos that I watch and love in which you report that you read 30 pages this week. And I'm amazed at that, considering that you've got 15 kids and they've all got typhoid. But nevertheless, if we wanted to break it down by parts, that's the way we would do it. 300 pages a week. Now, I know those of you who haven't read Shogun who are looking at this behemoth might not believe me. Those of you who have read Shogun will probably agree with me, though, that this is very nearly as compulsively readable as Essex Dogs. So I'm not belittling 300 pages a month. 300 pages a week is a huge thing, But the book is going to help you as much as any book can to get that page count done. And again, some of you might be looking at this and thinking, well, that's kind of intimidating. I mean, it's a huge historical novel. That's a little bit intimidating. And I want to give you the same kinds of assurances that I gave you for Wolf Hall, which is that this is not intimidating. You can rush right in and put your hands all over this. It is not intimidating, not if it's done well. James Clavell had a whole bunch of shortcomings as a person, but he knew how to tell a story, and wouldn't have allowed his name to be put on something that didn't tell a story well, and Shogun does. This is the basic prep that you need, is that this is a story from hundreds of years ago, and it is the story of one English pilot, the pilot of a sailing vessel, whose vessel is trapped in a storm, wrecked by scurvy, wrecked by high seas, and he and a handful of his crew wash up on the island of Japan. They are some of the first white people ever to show up on the island of Japan. So, and what follows is that main character, that pilot's adventures in Japan in the era of the medieval shogunate, where shoguns were, the name of the book, where shoguns ruled. And that all might sound a little abstruse, a little involved, a little intimidating. It's not. That description that I just gave you will already have some of you who are science fiction fans nodding your head, and you're entirely right. This is a first contact novel. And if you were reading a first contact novel in a science fiction, even if it were 1,200 pages long, you would expect that the author would tell you what you need to know. Not that you would need to go off to some Penguin Encyclopedia of Medieval Japan. That is absolutely true for this book. Absolutely true. Clavell knows what he's doing. But think of it that way. That's all. Until it becomes familiar to you, until you become... I mean, Clavell takes the very wise decision of giving us the book from the viewpoint of that English pilot. So this land is completely strange to him, and presumably it is strange to readers as well. The more he learns about it, the more we learn about it. By the time you feel a little confident in it, you'll be reading right along. So let Clavell do his job. Don't go into the book thinking, well, I've had it for a long time, but it's awful intimidating. I don't know enough about medieval Japan. Don't even think about that. Just go right in. Yeah, you'll enjoy it. If you try it, you'll enjoy it. Especially to those of you who have been guilty of letting this book sit on your shelf. Now's the time to end it. You're not getting any younger. Let's tackle Shogun together in March. So first 300 pages for the first weekend in March. You got a little jump start. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.